Hi everyone, it's Janice from the Divorcing Religion podcast. Did you know that it costs me money to produce each episode of this podcast? I'd really appreciate your help to keep my show on the air and helping other people. Please join me over on Patreon, where you can also find commercial-free episodes, and the links are in the show notes. Thanks so much. Hi everyone, welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious recovery consultant. Today's guest is Seth Showalter from Columbia, Missouri. Seth is a clinical supervisor and therapist at Brave Counseling and Psychiatry in Columbia. Seth is also an author, with his newest book scheduled for release in October of 2023. Seth's book, called Finally Free, A Surrender to Authenticity, chronicles his experiences through gay conversion therapy with reflections of what he thinks now as a therapist. According to Seth, it's a detailed journey through conversion therapy, highlighting the trauma caused and his eventual path towards acceptance. Finally Free, A Surrender to Authenticity is an intense journey exploring the brainwashing that Seth endured and the efforts taken that contributed to his religious trauma. Welcome, Seth.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I didn't really know about you until just recently when you reached out, because you have this book finished and it's almost ready to be released. And I thought the topic is really important. It's a significant topic. We have lots of fans in the LGBTQIA plus community, and I like to highlight their work, their experiences, and going through conversion therapy is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that causes a lot of trauma. And as a licensed clinical social worker myself, having been through conversion therapy, it really is actually what motivated me to become a social worker and actually want to help others. So I really believe in helping others, and I think that this experience is part of what really led me down that road.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about what growing up was like for you. You grew up in the United States, I'm guessing in a Christian home?
Oh, very much so. Of course. Southern Baptist through and through.
Oh boy.
We believe. It's all about diligence and keeping true to the foundation of our faith. And when I grew up, I went to church 3 days a week. It was part of just who I was and part of what our family tradition was all about. And, don't drink, don't smoke, don't have sex, don't do all of the things that, the Bible tells us not to do, because that will lead you down a path of sin. And I believed that for the longest time. In fact, it became such a strong commitment to me that I actually wanted to go into the ministry at a very young age. In fact, when I was in high school, I was pretty much convinced that going to the ministry was going to be my path. And that was where I was headed, until, of course, I realized that I was gay. And that really changed everything.
Yeah, that is, wow. I can just picture it, because I do hear from so many people who grow up in fundamentalist homes where they believe the Bible to be the literal, infallible word of God. Oftentimes there's a pastor or an evangelist or two that's been in the family tree somewhere. And these young people having real kind of impactful, and I've got my air quotes going, conversion experiences when they're in their teens, right? And so then they feel called to ministry. And it's just so outrageous when we think of all the peer pressure and the hormone storms and everything else going on in adolescence. And the fact that in a court of law, no adolescent could sign their name on their signature on a legal document and have it be binding. And yet we are often, pastors, family members are encouraging teenagers to make this lifelong commitment. It's really kind of outrageous. And of course, it's reaffirmed by everyone around us, and all the subtle spiritual manipulation tactics and psychological tactics that are at work when we are kind of trapped in a religious mindset. So that's interesting that you were thinking of it from your teen years. Did you have siblings? Where did you fall in the family order?
Yeah. So I have one brother who's 7 years older than me, and little spoiler alert, we're both gay.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
To throw a wrench into the family tree of the devout Christian family, we
wow.
we kind of threw that for all it's worth.
I am just wondering how mom and dad coped with that, but maybe that's part of your story that you'll share with us.
Yes, it's definitely in my book, Finally Free, A Surrender to Authenticity. It's all throughout that. But one of the things I really want to talk about when we talk about growing up in the Christian church, it really came down to believing that there was something wrong with me. I can't tell you, from even the youngest age, I believed firmly that God had saved me from a car accident at age 6. I was in a coma for 6 days and barely survived. And ever since that car accident, it was pretty much taught to me that God had saved me for a reason, and that I was here on purpose, and that there was great plans that had been set out before me. And it really set the path for all of the things that were to come, because the amount of pressure that put on a young person was just off the charts, off the charts. And so when I was, in elementary school and then into high school, I believed that since I was saved for a reason, I had to connect to some type of higher calling. And therefore, jumping headfirst into the church is where I found that answer. And my family was diehard Christians. I come from a very strong family with an extremely large extended family where we were all very Christian. I had a very large family where aunts, uncles, cousins, I think I had 10 to 15, maybe 20 cousins. And we were all involved in the church. So faith was always something that my life centered around. And therefore, given the car accident, I believe that there was a reason for it.
Wow. That I can just picture that as well. Children feeling like there's this burden, there's something that they have to do because their life was saved for a reason. They have to stand out. They have to be special somehow and capitalize on what they think God did. And to hear that from your parents and teachers, other people in the family, just constantly affirming that for you. Yep, you're special. God's got to have something really big planned for you. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. It was a lot of pressure. And to top that off, I grew up in a really small town where you had to be athletic in order to be popular. And since I had a traumatic brain injury, that was kind of out of the cards, so to speak. So I didn't fit in my hometown. So I never really felt accepted. And my family went to a church that was 30 minutes south of where I grew up. So I used to, as soon as I got my license when I turned 16, I would escape to church. Like, church became my haven, my place away from the turmoil of my hometown, away from the rejection, away from all of the pain, away from all of the difficult times that I was going through. And so church became like a really hopeful place for a period of time. but it was just me running, not really me finding solace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. And so the school that you were attending in your home community was a public school rather than a Christian
Yep.
school?
Yep. 32 kids in my graduating class, and we were the biggest school in the Tri-County area. So small town, Missouri, if you will.
Yes, and I'm curious, was your older brother an athlete?
No, neither one of us were. I mean, he played football and he did some of the sports, but he wasn't good at it. So, he tried. I just couldn't because of the traumatic brain injury that I had suffered. Like I couldn't do it. It was not smart for me to do. Doctors literally recommended that I do not play football, that I do not do these athletic sports, because it would actually place me at risk of having a seizure or experiencing another brain injury or something like that. Whereas my brother could. He just wasn't very good at it. Let's just be real.
So then, what was it like attending the school that you were in? Was it just a pretty lonely experience? And that's part of also why you really craved the belonging that you felt at church.
Very. I couldn't stand my school. In fact, it mentioned in my book, but I used to go to my cousin's house, which was also 30 minutes south near my church. And my aunt actually went to my parents at one point and offered to let me move in with them and go to their school instead of going to where I went to school because of the amount of rejection that I was experiencing. However, my parents decided that I would continue to go to school where I was because of the exceptional educational record. So it came down to the education rather than the athletics, but I absolutely hated it. And therefore, always running to church became the answer, because that's the only place that I could find any level of peace and tranquility.
Right. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, religion is the acceptable addiction. As for a lot of people, it does function almost as a type of addiction. And certainly for you, you needed to get that acceptance from somewhere. And the place you were getting it then was church and the church family. And it's not like parents would put restrictions on your church activities, probably.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah. Did you also stand out at school for being a Christian or a goody two shoes or whatever happens with folks?
Yes. I was actually voted my senior year of high school. I was actually voted most likely to become a pastor. And I was one of the only kids that was not invited to the parties, that was not invited to the, you know what I mean? Like all of the things that people do in high school and growing up, I was just always kind of not included. I remember even joining cross country. I mean, I feel like I'm throwing a pity party here, but like it's just part of the truth. But like I ran cross country one year because all the Christian kids were doing it. However, they all threw a party and I wasn't invited. So like it still didn't make sense. But I'm not trying to throw a pity party here. It's the story of what it was like for me growing up in this type of area. I was a very insecure and not confident individual, and it showed. And kids caught on to that, and they took advantage of it.
And so then at what point did you start thinking, well, the other guys seem to be attracted to girls and dating and all this going on? Had purity culture come up for you? Was that something the church and your parents kind of latched onto?
Oh, 100%. So purity culture was a huge thing. I can remember I Kissed Dating Goodbye by Joshua Harris. I mean, who does not forget that book? Who can I mean, that book should be burned in ceremonies.
I'm sure it has been.
But I'm not about burning books, but that one I wouldn't be too upset about. But purity culture was a thing, and it really played a role in making me terrified to even engage in any type of the dating world. In fact, my first sexual experience was actually with a guy, but I didn't view it that way, which was super ironic. Like I viewed it as acceptance, being accepted by other guys versus actual sexual activity.
Right. Yes. And so would you have been in your teens at that time?
Yeah, 15 or 16.
Right. Okay. And so that wasn't on your radar as a sexual act or activity. It was more the idea of, okay, finally I'm being accepted into a group and so then at what point did you start thinking, well, I think I am attracted to young men as opposed to the other girls that were around?
Well, that's a long, long path. So I dove headfirst into the church once I started realizing that I had these issues. So I first felt like it was acceptance at age 15 or 16. And then it started to happen more and more. In fact, a few other people got added to the mix. And then I was like, red flags started to flare.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, something is not right here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong. And at that point, I went back to my church, fell before the altar, and just cried my eyes out, and was like, "What in the world is going on here? I don't know. I don't know what's happening." And at that point, I just started dedicating myself more and more to the Lord, essentially thinking that if I could dedicate myself to the Lord more, then He would see. He would
Yes.
see my diligent effort, and He would reward me for that and actually give me desires for women. That was the entire idea. And so I started going to a mega church shortly thereafter that was really, really popular. It was an hour south of my hometown. And I started getting really involved there, thinking that if I got involved in ministry and got involved with more kids, helping kids, doing all these different types of activities, youth ministries, things like that, that God would honor me in that way. And it just never came to fruition.
Wow. And so you were keeping a secret, essentially, then about the things that you had been involved in, the relationships you had been involved in, and also coming to recognize that it's not something that was stopping your desire for women. It just wasn't happening, wasn't showing up for you.
Not at all.
So then what happened? How did the conversion therapy part of it show up, and how old were you?
So I'm gonna give a really quick synopsis of what kind of happened here.
Sure.
Because what occurred essentially was I gave several pieces. There were several steps that happened along this path, and instead of going, when I graduated from high school, instead of going to my chosen university where I wanted to go to school, I actually took an internship at this mega church for a year, thinking that this would be how I earned God's favor. However, it turns out the worship pastor was also secretly gay, and so that became a whole thing. And I actually ended up getting more power and more money in order to work with kids because of drinking with this worship pastor and all these things. So it gets really, that's all in the book, but it gets really intertwined and complicated. But I did that for a year. And then I went to my chosen university after that, did that for 3 years to finish out my undergrad. And throughout that experience in undergrad, I got involved with an organization known as Campus Crusade for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And Campus Crusade for Christ did several things. They got me involved with the spiritual mentor. They got me involved with the spiritual, what did they call it? Discipleship leader. They got me involved in different conferences all about healing homosexual desires called Living Waters. They got me involved in, all these different things. Yet it wasn't doing the trick. Nothing was working. I tried to date girls. That was a disaster.
Oh.
So that got really interesting. And then when I finally told them that I was struggling with same-sex attraction, that got really interesting. And so it became a whole thing. And so when I graduated with my undergrad degree in social work, I essentially went to my parents and said, listen, I believe that I am gay, but I don't want to be. So I don't know what to do. I believe in God. I believe that I was saved from this car accident when I was 6 years old for a reason. So this is what I'm going to ask of you. I am drinking alcohol in excess. I'm making unwise decisions because I'm trying to cope with the loss of the situation. And so I need you to send me somewhere, throw me in a room, lock the door, and leave me there until I can walk away straight.
Wow. Oh, that's heartbreaking.
They found a treatment facility in California that believed if God had the power to heal the alcoholic, then he could heal the homosexual. So I got on a plane at age 21, 22, and flew out to California on my own without knowing a single soul. Went to a small mom and pop substance use treatment facility and spent 89 days there. I was the only person there with same-sex attraction. Everyone else there was alcohol, heroin, cocaine addicts. And then there was me. And it got really interesting. Really interesting. They did some things that were definitely unethical.
Wow. And 89 days you were there. And so when you're talking about doing your undergrad degree, at that time, were you working or was your education in the field of mental health?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I worked for troubled youth. I worked for all these different agencies trying to help kids, trying to help other people. So yes, I was working in mental health.
Right. And so you recognize that there were definitely some shady things, shady practices going on at this place that was billing itself as being able to pray the gay away or whatever it was that they said they could help with.
Right. Which is another really interesting aspect of my book, which I think makes it unique against other books, because what my book actually is, are excerpts of my actual journal from when I was in this treatment program with reflections of what I think now as a therapist. So it's like journal entry, reflection, journal entry, reflection, journal entry, reflection. And it gets really interesting because you can see me go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm gay. No, I'm not gay. Yes, I'm gay. No, I'm not gay. Yes, I'm gay. I hate myself. No, I love myself. No, God loves me. No, God hates me. No, God loves me. No, God hates me. It's this continual back and forth for 89 days.
Wow.
Until I eventually come to the terms of accepting myself. And that's the book.
The book sounds great. It sounds very interesting way that you have laid it out. Wow. Yeah. So you really have the very inside scoop on this conversion therapy. So there you are, surrounded by folks who have significant substance use and misuse disorders, and you're completely different from that. You're not struggling with those things.
Well, I was using alcohol
Okay.
in a way that was not healthy.
Yeah.
I should be open and honest about that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I don't think it's uh, unfair to say that I benefited from the substance use treatment program aspect of it.
Mhm.
But was it the sole reason I was there? No. Did I need substance abuse treatment for it? No. But could I benefit from it? Sure. But the other stuff that was put on top of it, oh, for sure, traumatizing.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So they did some really interesting things. They brought in like spiritual gurus that did these things where they would have you go back and visualize moments of like periods of time when you were really hurt as a child.
Mhm.
And then they'd have you recount those memories and then have you close your eyes and then ask you to picture Jesus in that scene.
Mm.
And then have Jesus step forward and like reach out his hand. And then you try to reach for Jesus's hand in that memory and like try to like reconnect your trauma with the religious aspect. Now, understand that I had graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work. So
Yeah.
I was sitting there like, what that this is not ethical. This is all kinds of wrong. This
Yeah.
I have major problems. This is very problematic.
Mm.
Um and they did all kinds of things. Like one time someone had a seizure and rather than calling 911, what do you think they did?
They prayed.
The blood of Jesus.
Oh, wow.
You know, there's all kinds of different aspects of that throughout the journey that was really, really damaging. And they really had me feeling like there was something truly and deeply wrong with me. It was all on me. You know, and I think the biggest takeaway that I took was that God got all of the credit for all of the good, and I took all of the blame for all of the bad.
Oh, yes.
That's literally the entire premise of that treatment program. Anything good that happened was for God. God did it. Anything bad that happened, I did, no matter what,
Mhm.
across the board.
Right. And this is also what was being taught to the people who were there for their substance.
Yep.
Wow. It's so disempowering when I think of people going through treatments like that for substance abuse, being taught that the only available help is outside yourself, the only available power is outside yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a little pet peeve that I have. But so you
Get it.
were there for 89 days. Thankfully, you were journaling because that then ends up being the basis for your book.
And it's detailed. So like, I don't know how I did this, but I mean, it is detailed. Like Jack said this, Ben did this, and this is how I felt. Like it is in depth, step by step, everything that happened in that facility, because it's the only way that I was able to survive was actually going and spending time in my room alone, journaling and writing.
Mhm. Otherwise, did the condemnation aspect of it just feel like too much?
Yes, because I don't know what else I would have done.
So at the end of the 89 days, what was your feeling or understanding about yourself?
They had me commit to being celibate for 5 years. That
Wow.
was the conclusion. Is that I would be celibate for 5 years, leaving the facility, and yeah, that lasted not very long. Um, so that's kind of funny.
Wouldn't work for me.
No, didn't really work. But I left the facility really truly believing that I could be straight, I mean, what else was I supposed to think? I didn't have any outside influence. And I had to get out of the facility. There was no way of getting out. If I said, no, you're wrong, they would have just kept me longer.
Wow.
So you had to play the part in order to get out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sadly.
So it's the only way to survive was to watch your P's and Q's, essentially.
Right.
And play the part.
I'm thinking just a little farther back, wondering when you told your parents what was going on with you and what you were struggling with. I mean, that's such a terrifying time coming out to family, and particularly to very religious parents. What was their reaction? And did they know about your brother at that time?
They did. Brent had just recently come out a year before, and Brent was very against it. So my brother was very much against me going, and actually put his foot down and was like, no, this should not happen. This is going to cause trauma. This is going to cause all kinds of issues. And I was like, no, Brent, you are wrong. This is for God's glory. I'm doing what the Lord has told me to do. And mom and dad were just heartbroken because they saw how much pain I was in. Because they knew how hard I was trying. They knew how deeply this was hurting me. And I truly don't blame them. Even to this day, I don't blame them, because I'm the one that asked to go. They did not force me.
Wow. Yes. So your brother saw trouble on the horizon. Was he at that point still a Christian?
No, he had stepped away.
Yes. And so, I'm thinking back a few years, wondering, well, if you were a Southern Baptist, I mean, I don't guess that there are any Southern Baptist churches that are actually okay with being gay. I know that there are some different, more progressive type of Christian groups out there that just have no problem with it, but I don't know about Southern Baptists.
There are some Baptist churches that are. However, I don't know if you would categorize themselves as a Southern Baptist. Right. So that's clarification, right? Yeah. There's a difference between Southern Baptist and Baptist. So I don't know if there's any Southern Baptists that are.
Right. So then we'll fast forward again. You've managed to get yourself out of the facility and agreed to their rule of 5 years of celibacy. So what happens next? Do you go back home to the small town where you were raised and just try living the straight life there, or what happened?
So I lived at home for a little bit, and then I eventually went on to pursue my master's degree in social work. And honestly, it's complicated because at that point, I'm still believing that I can do this. All right. I still very much want to believe that all of this is possible. So I went into a master's program and literally wrote every research paper I had on homosexuality. My capstone research project from my social work master's program was like on homosexuality and sexual orientation change.
Wow.
I was trying to prove that this could actually work. And that's how deep this went. I was trying to take it and prove that this could actually be effective. And it was not until the day that gay marriage became legal in the United States that I said, I'm done with this. And I came out on Facebook the day that gay marriage was approved.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about that. After you got your master's, were you working at a practice, or did you hang your own shingle, or what sorts of stuff were you doing?
Well, it took me a really long time to find a job that I could keep because I was not healthy. I was not okay. I was still very, very ill and very upset. So I went from job to job to job. I think my first job out of college was with vocational rehabilitation. And I think I held it for 6 months until I had a grand mal seizure.
Oh, wow.
And then it was like, oh, hello, TBI from when I was 6 years old. Good to see you. Didn't realize you were going to cause seizures. Now I do. And that kind of threw a whole wrench into everything. And yeah, so on to the wheel we go, the up and
Yeah.
down path. And
Mhm.
so I went through a series of different jobs at that point because I couldn't drive for 6 months. So
Oh, that's
like
right.
it became a really difficult thing. And I didn't actually join, the therapeutic practice where I'm actually serving in a therapeutic capacity, like as a therapist, until years later. I was doing other types of work. I worked
Okay.
for an insurance company. I worked for a software company. I worked for community mental health agencies, like for a crisis center. I worked for a crisis line for 4 years. I did all
Mhm.
kinds of different work like that, but I wasn't working as a therapist
And were you
until
attending church?
off and on,
Okay.
off
Yeah.
and on, until I eventually gave up.
Did you have any uh, non-Christian friends or support at the time? Was your brother kind of your only support, or?
Brent and I weren't really close for quite a while. It actually took us many, many years to build that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of damage there, but we've really worked through a lot of that over the years, and him and I are very close to this day. But we were not back then. Back then, we were very distant,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I can understand why.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And so, what was going on with your parents at that time? Were you having to pretend with them? Are they the type of parents who were kind of up in your business about, well, are you going to church every Sunday? Or were you, yeah, okay. I'm
Very
sorry.
much so. Yes, my mom calls me every day, and did back then, and still does to this day.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm very close to my parents.
Yeah, well,
So
yes.
we're
Tell
very
us more.
meshed. We're very enmeshed. Uh,
Yeah, but now they know. I mean, so the day that gay marriage became legal in the United States was the day that you're like, okay, I'm done with all the pretending. There's not going to be any pretending anymore.
yeah, except there was a wrench in that.
Mhm.
I posted it on Facebook. My parents found out. Then my mom called me and was like, Seth, you have to take that post down. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, family can't hear about this on Facebook. They need to hear it directly from you.
Hmm.
So I was given a list of 10 names. I had to take the Facebook post down, and I had to call 10 people personally on the phone and tell them that I was gay and that I was coming out on Facebook and that they had a problem. They should delete me.
Wow. And let's just say here for our listeners, when you're an adult, if your mom or dad tells you to do anything, you don't have to do it. If as long as you're not in a position where you're beholden to them and it's in your best interest, you are allowed to make your own decisions about what you post and don't post, because I cannot imagine what it would be like. It takes courage to come out. You've come out on Facebook, and then to have to phone 10 people who are family members and tell them this intimate thing about you, and basically say, yeah, and if you don't like it, you better delete me.
Mm-hmm. I think it was a bluff, to be honest.
Mm,
You know what I mean? I think it was to get me to not do it.
yeah.
But I was like, oh no,
You called
I
that
will,
bluff?
I will call you. Call.
Wow. How did it go? Were any of them okay with it? Were they shocked? Were they aghast? Were they just didn't say much?
Most of them were shocked
Hmm.
because they knew how dedicated to the Lord I was. And
Hmm.
they knew how dedicated to Christianity I was. I mean,
Mhm.
look at how much, to the extent at which I had gone over the years. I mean, I was going to go into the youth ministry and become a pastor. Like, I had done so many different things. And so a lot of them were absolutely shocked. And I mean, I think even one said, "Why are you doing this to your parents?"
Mm. Mhm.
So some of those conversations were definitely very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And how was it with your parents after that?
We just kind of didn't talk about it. I found them grieving. I mean, they'd already kind of grieved one gay child.
Mhm.
Now they had to grieve two gay children, which really meant that for them, no biological grandchildren.
Right.
I mean, of course, we know that that is possible, but in their mind,
Right.
it was not,
Mhm.
not in the conventional way.
Mhm.
And that's what in their world, that means everything is, skewed. Um, so they had a lot of grieving to do.
Yeah. And um so then they were unavailable to support you as you were blossoming into this person who didn't have to hide anymore, just becoming more and more comfortable with
Yeah.
who you are.
Hmm.
So, what sorts of steps did you take, or did you feel like you needed to take any to just really start affirming yourself and embracing yourself and your identity and being okay with who you were? How long did that take?
Uh, I honestly, it's still a work in progress.
Mm.
I don't think that I will ever reach that point. I think it is something that I will always be on the journey towards.
Mm.
Given what I have been through, I love myself. Like, I've learned to love myself. I've learned to accept myself, but there are days that it's hard. It's difficult because I didn't choose this, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and it's it's a difficult thing. So, but how did I affirm myself? I think one of the biggest things that a person can do is really surround themselves by people who are supportive and
Mhm.
who do accept you for who you are. I think that's absolutely critical. Being surrounded by people who are not supportive and do not uplift you only tears you down and keeps you from who you really want to be. And so one of the biggest core things for me was stepping away from the church.
Mhm.
I had to do that. It was the only way to survive.
Mhm.
I couldn't continue to just keep going and feel the level of condemnation and shame that I felt every single time I walked through those doors.
Mhm.
They didn't have to say anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
knew exactly what they felt and I knew exactly what they thought without them saying a single word.
Right. And I mean the indoctrination right from childhood was thorough. You didn't even need anyone else to step in and shame you because you were already shaming yourself because of everything that
Bingo.
you were taught. Yes, that's so painful and so insidious. And we don't ask to be gay, and we also don't ask to be indoctrinated in childhood by
Right.
our parents' religious ideologies. So then, still on that topic, where would you place yourself now on the spectrum of belief?
A great question. And it's actually mentioned in my book. So it's a hard question to answer, but I'm going to do my best here because I don't have a clear answer. Like, I don't have, like, this is what it is. All I can tell you is here are the different things.
Mhm.
And here are the different things. I don't go to church anymore. I do not believe that the Bible is the inherent word of God anymore. I believe that it's a book of wisdom and that has been passed down. Can it be useful? Can it be helpful? Yes. Is it the inherent word of God? I don't believe that anymore. There's too many mistakes. And it's been translated and used too many times to hurt other people. I don't regard it the same way. Uh, do I still believe in Jesus Christ? Yes. I do. I don't know how I could negate that after everything that I have been through. But I don't think that I hold to the traditional Judeo-Christian belief system that I was raised under. I definitely do not.
Yeah, it's a journey, and you're at a certain point on your own journey, and you're the
Yeah,
one that has to be comfortable with the beliefs that you still hold. And we have to be willing to critically evaluate even our most cherished beliefs. And if we have a hard time doing it, it's kind of like the difference between us holding a belief and the belief holding us. And we
hmm
always want to make sure that we are the ones holding the belief, that we are free to pick up and put down beliefs as evidence, new evidence comes to light, or we learn more. And certainly that willingness to accept ourselves everywhere along that journey and accept other people exactly as they are. That's so important. And especially for you as a social worker, you're all about accepting people where they're at.
absolutely. 100%. Meeting people where they are.
Mhm.
Our goal is not necessarily to change people, but to accept them and where they are in that path.
Yeah. So do you, in the work that you do you have a practice that is for helping people who are struggling with coming to terms with their sexuality? Is that anything that you do, or support groups, or?
So I work for a very LGBTQIA affirming practice. I absolutely love it. It's one of my
Yay!
favorite things in the world.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I have several clientele who fall within that category. However, I'm not limited to it. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I meet and serve everyone that comes through my
Mhm.
doors,
Yeah.
but I definitely do cater, and it's listed all throughout. You know what I mean? Psychology Today. It's on my website. It's all throughout that I definitely serve the LGBTQIA community. I've tried to facilitate a trans group here in Columbia.
Mhm.
However, getting that uh, people to come to that has been really difficult, especially in the state of Missouri. It's with the amount of laws that are being passed here. People are really scared. People are very,
Oh.
very scared to seek support and seek help in certain areas of our population. So we've offered that support. We just haven't had much. We haven't had good reception, but we definitely do host and provide that support for people who do seek it.
Right. And so, fill me in a little bit about your state and the things that are going on in the US right now with very laws that are unfriendly and antagonistic to the LGBTQ community.
Well, I think here in the United States, there since 2023, I believe there have been over 500 anti-LGBTQIA plus laws that have been passed in Republican states. So that's
Unbelievable.
just something to kind of throw out. Most of those laws are specifically in regard to the trans community. And granted, I don't identify as trans, but it is part of my community, and I definitely love and support such individuals and want
Mhm.
a safe environment for said individuals. So it's definitely something that's very dear to my heart, and something that I really care about. So, but here in the state of Missouri, we've been Republicans. Sorry to make this political, but unfortunately, it is. Have been passing laws that often limit, you know, um, what am I trying to say here? They limit uh, hormone blockers and things like that for certain age groups, so that people cannot receive the care that they want to receive. As a therapist, I'm no longer allowed to provide gender affirming care here in the
Oh,
state of Missouri. That's actually been outlawed.
wow.
The only people who can provide that in the state of Missouri now are psychologists. And
Mhm.
as a licensed clinical social worker, I'm not allowed to. And if I were to say that I provide that type of therapy, I could actually be sued.
That's just, as a Canadian, it's just absolutely heartbreaking and so hard to believe. Um, Wow. Yeah, my heart really does go out to folks in the United States and around the world who are living in countries that are hostile to
Mhm.
them. It's just, it's such a terrible predicament that I hope changes for the better
Yeah.
sometime soon. And so you've written this book, and it's coming out actually in October, which is
Yes.
very exciting. Who would you recommend your book for?
It's a great question. I, I, two populations. I recommend this population specifically for the LGBTQIA population,
Hmm.
because I want it to serve as a voice for not going through this type of treatment. Uh,
Right.
so individuals who are considering this type of treatment, I want this to serve as a guidepost and a warning for individuals so that they will not pursue this type of thing and actually understand the impact. And
Hmm.
trust me, it's intense. It shows the true impact. The other idea here is that it would also be helpful for individuals, a part of the LGBTQIA community, who are just really wanting to know the damage that can be done and how that actually affects individuals. And then I want to call out the Christians. I really want to
Hmm.
call out the Christians.
Hmm.
I in fact, the epilogue of my book is really kind of a call out to the church specifically. In fact, I think my last two paragraphs are ultimately to the church. I want to say this, and that's
Hmm.
literally how I end my book. It's a specific call out to Christians because I want them to understand that what they believe and how they believe it has a real life impact on people's lives, and it isn't just a mere belief anymore. There are actual lives on the line, and our beliefs actually hold power when it's backed by votes and action, which is what's happening here in the United States of America
Hmm.
in
Yes.
2023.
Wow. Excellent. I think that's a powerful way for us to end our discussion. Would you please tell folks how they can find you, how they can get in touch with you?
Oh, absolutely. You can reach out to me. I have a website known as sethshowalter.com. There you can find my information as well as my professional bio information about my book, including the cover art, which I'm really excited about, and all of the links to all of my social media platforms, as well as a contact form to be able to get a hold of me, ask any questions, book potential upcoming appearances, things like that. So please just check out SethShowalter.com. I also, it's kind of in retirement right now, but I also have another website known as Mental Health Uncovered. It's another podcast that I used to run. Um, I will be relaunching that in the upcoming weeks. It's just on dormant for right now,
Hmm.
but it will be reactivated in the upcoming months.
Resurrected.
Yeah, there we go. Something like that. It'll be resurrected in a while. It hasn't been since January of this year because I was writing a book.
Right. And
So
what's that podcast called again?
Mental Health Uncovered.
Yes. And give us the name of your book one more time.
Finally free, a surrender to authenticity.
Beautiful. That is awesome. This has been such an interesting interview. I'm really glad that you are exactly where you're at right now and helping other people. Thanks for being willing to write it all down to help more people.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. Please take care. Bye bye.